First up on our live Q&A, Jeff Rodgers. If Lamb and Jeudy are gone by pick 12, should my Raiders select Ruggs, or is that a reach for him? I don't consider it a reach. I just finished up my big board. Stay tuned for that one. He's 13 on mine, so your one spot reach isn't really your reach at all. And if both those players are off the board, you're not going to get him at 19. And frankly, you might have 4 receivers go off the board in that particular scenario. So I would be on board with that one if I were the Raiders. I think that'd be a quality addition by them. A super chat right on cue from Brett Stevens. Do you think the Cowboys would be interested in trading for DeShaun Watson? I think there are like 5-ish teams that wouldn't be interested in trading for DeShaun Watson, and the Cowboys would not be among them. I think, yes, they would have interest, even though it's Houston, and I know we can make fun of Bill O'Brien very easily. I don't foresee him actually trading away DeShaun Watson. If he did, I think at that point you might have to intervene if you're the NFL and remove him from power, because that's not in the interest of competitive balance. So, look, you could work out a deal involving Dak, but I wouldn't get your hopes up if you want DeShaun in Dallas. Jacob Rawleigh, Yannick Ngakoue is from Maryland, so could the Ravens make sense? The Ravens would have to move on from Matthew Judon, so I think that does make some sense. You could easily, rescind that tag, trade him for next to nothing, whatever you need to do. I think Yannick would like it. I think Yannick wants to get the bag right now. Yannick is not helping himself, by the way, with this social media tirade that he's been going on the past couple of days, or really, I guess, weeks, months at this point. So I think it does make some sense, but I think Jacksonville is hesitant for whatever reason to really move on from Yannick overall. So speaking of trades, because Yannick would be a draft day trade, not including the ones that have happened so far, over or under 6.5 trades in round 1 of the NFL draft. Historically speaking, 6 ends up being a pretty good over-under figure, but for this year, I'm not sure what ends up happening, because the NFL, this is uncharted territory for them. How will they approach it? Will you see more trades as teams try to move up for the guy that they trust, or will you see even fewer? So I'm not super sure, but go ahead and cast your votes down in the comments, and heck, I'll make this the pinned comment as well. Speedy, which almost looks like a Redskins helmet. I can't see which player that is, though. Anyway, where will Trent go? He means Trent Williams, and what will it be worth? I don't know what it ends up being worth. I think he gets dealt. I think if you're the Redskins, you're hoping for a day 3 pick. It's a fairly strong tackle class. At least there's a lot of promise with some of those guys. I think he gets dealt. I don't know where he ends up going. I think both these parties have some fault to be had here. The Redskins probably more so because they botched this from the beginning. But I don't think you're getting a second-round pick like maybe you could have gotten at last year had you done this earlier and not dragged it out for this point almost a year. All right, Winson Shan looking handsome today. Do you think Jordan Love's draft stock rises a bit because of the Tua injury? Also, where's Mitch? Mitch not on today's show due to lack of hustle. As for Love, I don't know if it really moves the needle. He's kind of like the wild card here in terms of where he ends up going. You're going to have Burrow, and I think still Tua and Herbert go pretty early. I think Love ends up being quarterback 4. But I think if you're let's say the Dolphins or Chargers, if you pass on a quarterback, I don't think you're passing on Tua to take Jordan Love. I think you're passing on quarterback altogether. From Jackson Cochran, now that Gurley is gone, do you think Darrell Henderson will be the starter? I think he's going to get a shot. The Rams spent a premium draft pick on him last year because they wanted him to be the starter. So I think they'll try to nudge him that direction, but they've also got to, focus on making sure that the best players on the field, and that could be Malcolm Brown or even another draft pick. But as of right now, favorite-wise, Henderson has had more invested in him, so I'm going to go that he is the favorite for the starting back job in LA. Jordan Thomas says Cowboys should a 5th for Marquise Goodwin. I think the Niners say yes. Marquise Goodwin, though, isn't that cheap, and I think that's a potential issue there for any team. And just in terms of what Marquise Goodwin has done over the past couple of years, he's kind of regressed in large part due to injury. So you're not going to have a ton of value there. And I think maybe a draft day trade makes the most sense because it's a good receiver class. You can find a backup maybe number 3 receiver, which is what the Cowboys need right now. But you're still going to have to end up paying Marquise Goodwin over $4 million. That's not that bad. That's relatively favorable. But I don't know how many teams want Goodwin right now because of the injury history. He might end up being cut by San Francisco instead. But if he does get dealt, I think that mid to late day 3 price tag ends up being about right. Everything but football, how many running backs will go in the first round? That is a fantastic over-under. I almost want to put the over-under at 1.5 or just at 0.5. I don't think you see many backs go off the board early this year. I think that the NFL is kind of moving in the direction of, hey, we're not going to spend premium picks on a back. I think J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, and Jonathan Taylor, even just 5 years ago, would have had really good chances to all go in round 1. But the Bucs aren't going to go back. I don't think the Falcons aren't. You look at the back end of round 1, not that many teams need one. So I think the run comes early on day 2. Maybe one sneaks in, but I don't think you're going to see many backs go in the first round of this year's draft. Speaking of the running backs, by the way, who do you think is the best running back prospect this year? I think there are quite a few that you can consider in this discussion. There are, again, it's a pretty, I think, top-heavy, maybe is the best way to describe it. Top-heavy draft class in terms of the running back position. You have J.K. Dobbins. I see some of his names coming in there. I see Jonathan Taylor. That's been a very popular one as well, which isn't a huge surprise given the way he produced and tested at Wisconsin and at the NFL Combine. I think DeAndre Swift is also worth discussion there. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I like him, but I think he's number 4. Cam Akers checks in at number 5. And then for me, there's a pretty significant drop. So there are 5 guys that I think are worthy of that top 50 range. Personally, for me, I've got J.K. Dobbins as my number 1 back this year. Dey Gamer, who do you think is the most overrated NFL draft prospect? For where I think he's going to end up going, and I, of course, could end up being wrong on this, I think one of the more overrated guys is Jacob Eason. I think he's going to end up going on day 2 because he's got the size you want. He's got this cannon for an arm. He's got the classic prototype of a player who the NFL falls in love with. If he goes top 75, for where I have him at on my board, 123 overall, a round 4 grade, that's a good 50 picks too early. That's significantly early for me. So there are, I'm sure, other players in there, but Jacob Eason would be the one that I mentioned. I don't mean that to throw shade at Eason, but I think he's just going to go earlier than what his body of work says he should right now. Adrian Perkins, should the Dolphins trade for Leonard Fournette? I actually wouldn't mind it. I don't think he'd be that expensive. The Dolphins could get him for maybe it's a late day 2, early day 3 pick, somewhere in that range. Yeah, they added Jordan Howard. It's Jordan Howard. You can trade for Fournette and then use those first and second round picks to build up your offensive line. That's a pretty good idea if I'm the Dolphins. Now, this year's NFL draft hats, unlike most years, folks, they're actually pretty good. They don't suck this time. They went back to a more simplistic style, not trying to do way too much, just have the little slogan on the right side. These draft hats are available at chatsports.com/NFL draft hat. Then you can just pick your team and see the options out there. They've got the flat bill. They've got the more rounded brims. They've got the adjustable backs and the fitted backs as well. They are all available at chatsports.com/NFL draft hat. That is chatsports.com/NFL draft hat. And don't worry, we'll get that link in the comments and it's in the description of this video as well. From everything but football, ironically, talking about football, I'm very confused by that. If Tua gets past the Dolphins and Chargers, are the Raiders the next destination? We'll ignore trades as a possibility, just because that gets really complicated. I don't think the Jags would do it. I think they would pass, but I think you have to mention them as at least a possibility at that point. And then, yes, I do think the Raiders become a possible spot at 12. But if he's at 12, that means there are medical concerns. And if there are medical concerns, that means he might continue to slide down and down in round 1. From Burger Does Sports, who unsurprisingly a Denver fan, thoughts on the Broncos trading up for Jerry Jeudy and those rumors. That is on the channel from yesterday, by the way, so you can check out some more in-depth thoughts on it, Burger. I think it makes sense. I think one of the Bama guys would be a great fit for Denver. They're looking for a little bit more speed, a little bit more route running than, Courtland Sutton brings as a bigger, but not that he's bad at that, but I think that'd be a good complementary piece to a really good receiver in Sutton. If you want to assure yourself of that guy, you do have to trade up for one, because the Jags at 9 could go receiver. The Jets, Raiders, and Niners and Bucks could all go receiver before you at 15. So maybe pick 10 is the sweet spot for Denver. You move up, the Browns trade down, take a lineman later, maybe Ezra Cleveland, and the Broncos get their number 1A or 1B, whatever you want to go, receiver to pair with Courtland Sutton. From Savior Charles, more likely to bust, CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy? Okay, so I wanted to define bust as like really, really bad, flaming out and having a horrible John Baldwin-esque NFL career. Again, I don't think it happens to either of those guys. But I think more likely to bottom out is CeeDee Lamb, who, as a reminder, is my number 1 receiver. Jerry Jeudy is able to generate separation with much more ease. Because of that, I think his floor, the risk is a little bit lower. So I don't think either of those guys bust. I think they're both very productive receivers. But I think Lamb, who does have the higher ceiling, maybe a little bit more likely to end up busting instead. So how many rounds of the NFL draft will you guys end up watching? Let me know in the comment section. I hope the answer here is 7 of them. That's certainly my hope and my expectation in terms of what ends up happening. So how many rounds of the NFL draft will you guys watch? I hope it's 7, because we're going to be live for all 7 of them. Yeah. So if you haven't already, subscribe. Join the channel here, because we'll be live on Thursday, on Friday, on Saturday, including some before the rumors. We'll talk about those, and some after some grades too. So if you have not already, hit that big red button. Unlike some of the other networks out there, we are not going to disappear on day 3 midway through. No, we'll stay live for the entirety. So hit that big red button and subscribe at youtube.com/chatsportstv. I see a bunch of 7s coming in. Shout out Carpenter Show for putting in 8. I appreciate that very much. All right, Matthew Bobo wants to know who the Packers should draft. I think an ideal potential fit for them would be Denzel Mims. I think he'd be a good addition to that Packers wide receiver room. I think he'd fit in fairly well. You don't have to change that many colors for him either in terms of his wardrobe, because, you got the green and yellow, a little bit different scheme, but still. And I think he's a good player, too. He's my number 5 receiver this year. I don't know if he's going to be there. I think I might be higher on him than some of the other NFL teams, but I think he'd be a good addition for Green Bay. And if he's off the board, you can look at receiver, linebacker, or could even potentially start looking at tackle as well. So that's a good question, Matthew. Green Bay, though, in general, is kind of at the mercy of, the rest of the draft, given where they're picking in round 1. All right, Cade Olive with a 2-part question. Where's Cam Newton going, and where will Thaddeus Moss end up? First off, you can't say Moss in the comments. Cam is going to wait until after the draft. And if a team like the Chargers or Dolphins don't go quarterback in round 1, or Jacksonville either, I think he'll try to go to one of those spots, end up settling in as a potential starter, and then next year, after the whole season, try and get more money after that. As for Thaddeus Moss, I think he goes somewhere on day 3 if for a team looking for a number 2, number 3 tight end early on. Gold Fox 177 with some super chats now flowing in here. What would a trade between the Dolphins and Bengals for number 1 look like, and would they have to include all 3 of their first rounds? So as I have said since day 1, the Bengals are not trading this pick. Just so we're clear, they're not going to do it. It's not happening. If they were to, all 3 first have to be involved, and then a whole lot more. Because the Bengals not only want the number 1 overall pick, they want the guy the Dolphins would try to acquire. So the asking price would be beyond the RG3 trade. It'd be beyond the Jared Goff, the Carson Wentz deals, all of those. It would be a record-setting trade. It would be, in reality, the core of this year's draft, the core of next year's draft, and possibly into 2022 for Miami. It would be incredibly expensive. That's why it's not going to end up happening. Jordan Thomas wants to know what the Cowboys could get for Xavier Woods. Given that he's got just 1 year left on his deal, you're probably looking at a mid to late day 3 pick if he's not packaged with something else in particular. So, look, just because of the way the contract is set up, you only have 1 year left. You're not getting that much guaranteed time with him. You're probably looking in that day 3 range. Anything more than a 4th would be a pretty big stunner for me. From JG, love the show. Cowboys going to the conference championship. Not with the way this roster is currently constructed. There are simply better teams right now in the NFC. Will they compete for it? I think they will be competing for a playoff spot this upcoming season. But I don't necessarily think that the expectation should be, oh, this team is the favorite for the conference championship. If everything goes right, well, yeah, they could absolutely get their way there. But I don't think they should be considered the favorites on that front. I know we got a whole bunch of draft questions coming in, so if I haven't gotten to yours yet, because we got about 600 people watching right now, we're not going to get to all of them. There's just no way. Go follow me on Twitter at whatgoingdown. We'll get the link in the comments for you guys. Let's give it to 7,700 followers. We are almost there. And if we don't get to your question that way, you guys can just DM me and hit me up on Twitter. I am super far behind, but I will get to them with the NFL draft nearly here. So go follow me on Twitter at whatgoingdowning.